Ramayana is an earlier Indonesian book. Part 3. The works of Santosaba. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. INDONÄSIARYÄ. By Santosaba. Exploration and research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787. Sacred literature. According to the Hindu spiritual leader Swami Vivekananda, Hinduism is based on a set of spiritual guidelines discovered by different people at different times. Over the centuries, these guidelines were passed down orally in verse so that they can be memorized, until they are finally written down. Over the centuries, the sages refined the teaching and expanded their propositions. In the post-Vedic period and according to contemporary Hindu belief, much of the Hindu literature is not to be taken literally. Ethics and metaphorical meanings are given priority. Among these sacred texts, the Vedas are the oldest, followed by the Upanishads as the most important basic literature in studying Hindu philosophy. Other literatures that are important foundations in Hinduism are Tantra, religion, Purana, and two epic scriptures, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata. Bhagavad-gīta is the teaching contained in the Mahabharata, which is a widely studied literature, which is often referred to as the essence of the Vedas. Much of the Hindu literature is written in Sanskrit. The libraries are classified into two classes, Sruti and Smrti. Sruti, meaning what is heard, refers primarily to the collection of the Vedas, which are the oldest Hindu literary form. Many Hindus glorify the Vedas as eternal truths revealed to ancient sages, while others do not concern the composition of the Vedas with God or a person. Hindus believe in the Vedas as a guide for the spiritual world, which will exist forever, even if it had never been revealed to the sages. Hindus have this belief because they believe that the spiritual truths in the Vedas are eternal, which can continue to be revealed by new ways. There are 4 Vedas, namely Rigveda, Arjveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. The Rigveda is the first and most important of the Vedas. Each Veda is divided into 4 parts. The main one, the standard Veda, is the Samhita, which compiles mantras. The other 3 sections make up the supplementary set for the Samhita, usually in prose and believed to be younger than the Samhita. The 3 sections are the Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishads. The first 2 parts are called Karmakanda, ritual portion, while the latter is called Jnanakanda, knowledge portion. The Vedic collections focus on performing ceremonies, while the Upanishadic collections focus on spiritual perspectives and philosophical teachings, and discuss Brahman and reincarnation. Smrti. Hindu scriptures which are not included in Sruti are classified into Smrti, memory. The famous Smrti book is the Indian epic, Itihasa, consisting of the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana. Itihasa is a part of Hindu literature that tells the story of the heroism of Hindu kings and knights in the past and is combined with religious philosophy, mythology, and stories of supernatural beings. The Bhagavad-gīta book, Bhagavad-gīta, is an integral part of the Mahabharata, and is one of the most famous Hindu scriptures. The book contains philosophical teachings narrated by Krishna, as Vishnu Awatara, to Arjuna, before the war in Kurukshetra. Bhagavad-gīta consists of 18 chapters and contains plus or minus 650 verses. Each chapter describes Arjuna's answers to Krishna. These answers are sacred discourses as well as the points of Vedic teachings. However, books that belong to the Gita, sometimes called Gitopanishads, are often classified under Sruti, because their context is Upanishadic. The Puranas, that describe Hindu teachings through vivid stories, belong to the Smrti. The Puranas contain mythology, legends, and ancient stories which Hindus believe to be true. The word Purana means ancient history, or ancient stories. The writing of the Puranas is thought to have begun around 500 BC. There are 18 Puranas which are called Mahapurana. Other books belonging to the Smrti include Devimahadmaya, Tantra, Yogasutra, Tiramantiram, Siwasutra, and Religion Agama. In addition, there is the Manusmrti book, which is a prescriptive law book that underlies societal rules and social stratification which then guides people to form the caste system in India. The Book of Tantra contains the ways of worshipping each sect in Hinduism. The Book of Tantra also regulates the construction of Hindu shrines and the placement of statues. The Book of Nidasastra contains leadership teachings and guidelines for being a good leader. The Jyotisha book is a book that contains the teachings of the traditional Hindu astronomical system. The Jyotisha book contains guidelines about celestial bodies and their circulation. The Book of Jyotisha is used to predict the arrival of a season. Hinduism and Buddhism. We will enter into the discussion about Hinduism and Buddhism. Once the writer remembers it here so that there is no confusion of understanding when reading it, it is as follows. The indigenous teachings of the archipelago that I have described above are not Hindu, let alone Buddhism. They are the original teachings of the archipelago that underlie Jain, Hindu and Buddhist teachings. In the explanation about Bali above, it all explains the native culture of the archipelago. There are some similarities with Hindu teachings in India. That is what makes the basis for the teachings from the archipelago that color Hinduism in India. In the explanation of Hinduism in India above, it is very clear that the difference is with the teachings of the archipelago which are considered Hindu today. Remember the discussion above about the original teachings of the archipelago which must be called Hinduism. In the explanation of Hinduism and Buddhism here the author will raise the teachings of Hinduism originating from India not in the archipelago, because the original teachings of the archipelago are not actually Hindu-like in India. Apart from Buddhism, the teachings of Buddhism in the archipelago are indeed the original teachings carried from India. So here we are to be careful in understanding the term in the word Hindu alone because it is a bit biased about this term at this time. The author has assumed that the general public has generalized about Hinduism, namely treating Hinduism in the archipelago with Hinduism in India, even though it is true. The original religion of the archipelago which was forced to be called Hindu, this means that the original religion of the archipelago is not actually Hindu. Balinese Hinduism is also called Hindu Dharma or Gama Tirtha, the religion of holy water, is a Hindu practice that is generally practiced by the majority of Indonesia's Baladi ethnic groups. Balinese Hinduism is a syncretism or an amalgamation of Hindu sects and beliefs. Or today it is better known as Sampradaya, both the Shiva sect. Banten. If a ritual, especially Banten, draws its literary base directly into the teachings of the valley, it will be very difficult to find, because the basis for making offerings is the reflection of religious leaders in Bali, the results of meditation, and the equality of spiritual understanding of sects which of course were originally based on pre-existing teachings. In accordance with the nature of history, knowledge about the arrival of Hinduism in Bali is based on facts that can be gathered. According to the research results of historical scholars, that Hinduism that came to Bali, some came from Central Java, East Java, Sumatra and some also came from Thailand. When did the original teachings of Bali become called Hindu? According to the evidence in the Buddhist stupika found at the Penataran Sasi temple in Pajang, that in the 8th century Bali there was Hinduism in the form of religion. Shiva religion. Also copper inscriptions stored in the village of Sukawana Kintaman in 882 AD have mentioned the names of Bhiksu Shiva Nirmala, Bhiksu Shiva Praja and Bhiksu Siwa Kengsida. This means that the existence of the Shiva religion in Bali existed before Hinduyang teachings called Hinduism in India existed in the 7th century AD. From the historical data of Old Bali, it is obtained information, the kings of Old Bali before Gajamata's arrival to Bali in 1343 AD, were considered to have embraced the Mahayana religion. This must be clarified, when the Mahayana missionaries to Bali before Gajamata. Mahayana religion in Bali is considered to be adhered to by the kings and high-ranking officials of the ancient Balinese government, while the Shiva religion is adhered to by the community. The intensive cultivation of Shiva and Buddhism in Bali, starting at the end of the 10th century, was marked by the marriage of Dharma Udayana, the king of Old Bali, who was considered Mahayana Buddhist with Mahendradatta, the daughter of the king of East Java, who was Shiva. Since then the Shiva religion developed widely in Bali and Buddhism did not develop itself, but instead melted into the Shiva religion. During the reign of King Anak Wungsu in Bali, 11th century, Empukucharan came from East Java to Bali. He is domiciled in Silayukti Padangbai now. Empukucharan came to Bali, taught the conception of Trimurtitan worship to be applied to each Pakraman village. He too teaches about the private Naban ceremony, about the Manusa Yajna Dharmakahuripan ceremony, about how to make Meru in Basaki, about the Palanga meatball and establishing the Bali Jagat Sad Kayangan and several other Kayangan and others. Besides that, he also perfected religious life in Bali from before and gathered several religious sects that already existed in Bali, such as the Kala sect, the Sambhu sect, the Indian sect, the Brahma sect, the Vaishnava sect and the Saiva sect. 1. Kala forced Wanakirti teaches about the ceremony for planting crops per farm. 2. Forced Sambhu Jagatkirti teaches about the ritual of the universe. Bhuwana held to were and Kuru Kaya Pada Panka Maha Buddha. 3. Forced Indra Samudrakirti teaches about the ceremony of the sea, mountains, Marabu Bhumi Enjanteg Linga Dwahara. 4. Forced Agni Admakirti teaches about the ceremonies of Adma or Rokmanuja and all creatures, Sarva Prani. 5. Forced Vaishnava Dhanukirti teaches about tributing lakes, fields and all cleansing of spirituality. 6. Forced Saiva Janakirti teaches about ritualizing humans in the form of Janmaprarti and Dharmakahuripan ceremonies. The teaching mentioned above is called Sad Kirti, which is the basis of the forms of religious ceremonies that will later be called Hinduism in Bali, which are finally perfected and included in the 5 Yajna, accompanied by the understanding of the history of Hindu Bali Tantrayana. During the reign of Dalem Badarangong in Gelgal 1460–1550 AD, Dang Hyang Narartha came from Kediri, East Java to Bali. The arrival of Beliauke Bali has a dual purpose, namely 1. Defending Bali from the insistence of a new understanding, Red, Islam, that has brought down Majapahit. 2. Improve and perfect the ways of religious life in Bali towards its purity. He teaches about Tripurusa in the Siva Siddhanta conception, namely, Shiva, Sada Shiva and Parama Shiva, which are identified with Trimurti. He also taught how to make Padmasala Palanga as a prayer for Hyang Widi. He carried out Ekadasarudra's work in Basaki, to appeal for the peace of the Balinese people. Apart from that, he also taught about his Panka Yad, which was perfected in Balidan, and also compiled the Veda, which is used by the Pedanda now in Bali. He is a great writer, and various literary works he inherited in Bali now, such as Dharmasanya, Nidasastra, Ekapratama, Usana Bali, Ampik, Sebun Bangkung, and so on. His journey as a Dharmayatra in Bali is immortalized in many temples, such as Puran Sak, Rambut Siwi, Tanalot, Patitanjit, Uluwatu, Sakanan, Air Jarak, Panjak Badu, and so on. He traveled to Lombok and Sumbawa and finally Moksa in Uluwatu. During this period, Dang Hyang Astapaka came from East Java to Bali. He is considered to be a Buddhist priest from the lineage of Dang Hyang Angsoka, who is a Vajrayana sect with worship primarily to Vairocana, namely Dhyani Buddha, who is in the composition of the Panka Tathagata Buddha. For clarification, the historical writers consider the teachings that were brought to be Buddhist teachings. This is because there are similarities to these teachings. And actually what was brought was the original Dharmak. This original Dharmak was what Siddhartha Gautama developed into a Buddhist teaching, who was born in India. Dang Hyang Angsoka. His descendants are now in the village of Buddha Keling Karangasem, in the village of Batuan Gyanyar, and also in other places. The government of Sri Krishna Kepakizan in Bali, who came from Majapahit, implemented the traditions that prevailed in Majapahit, such as in large religious ceremonies led by the priest Shiva, as described in the Negarakartagama, which is currently inherited on the island of Bali and developed according to village, Kala and Patra. In further developments, that history records changes in the state system in Indonesia. With the colonization of Indonesia by the Dutch, then classical education was implemented in Indonesia, with a new education system. This resulted in the development of intellectual thought in society, including among the Balinese in Bali. Thus, religious teachings began to be studied in depth using a scientific approach and rational analyses. This was pioneered by Hindologians who successfully completed their education in India. They began to introduce the Bhagavad-gita and Apani scriptures, which were previously less well known in Indonesian. Rational views emerged and slowly aroused the conscience of the Balinese people to deepen their knowledge and belief in Hinduism. This was the initial process of the formation of Parasada. Now Hindus have spread throughout the provinces in Indonesia, especially in Central Java and in East Java. The redevelopment of Hindus in Indonesia, who had experienced the heyday in Indonesia during the Majapahit era, does not mean spreading a new religion, but they themselves are full of confidence to return to the religion adhered to by their ancient ancestors, original Dharmic. The history of the original teachings of the archipelago which was forced to change was called Hindu. The general belief for the Indonesian archipelago is belonging to the Indonesian group, believing in an invisible spiritual entity that has supernatural powers, not animism or dynamism. It is recognized by the Indonesian people among the ancient Javanese, Sundanese and Balinese as Hyang, which can mean God, divine or ancestors. Pray Hyang. Where does the word prayer come from? Is this word from Arabic or India? The literacy of the word prayer proves that the ancestors of the archipelago did not embrace animism and dynamism. Let's take a look. Learning from history is an effort to look back to then. Jump far forward, looking back with wisely, to see clearly, without colliding, beliefs that exist in the past and present. Past interpretations may change in response to new evidence. The old consensus, based on limited evidence, may no longer be considered historically valid in explaining the specifics of cause and effect, motivation and importance. The ancestors of the archipelago in the previous advanced era had become God, have believed in the existence of Supreme God, with different designations in each region in the archipelago. And the procession of worship is identified with the literacy of the word pray. The literacy of the word is formed from two syllables, semba, and the word hyang. Hyang is a word that shows the understanding of the absolute God. The one Almighty God, single Hyang Widi. The previous ancestors of Nusantara had understood the concept of understanding and understanding above. First, before the birth of the great noble figures who lived in 560-480 BC in India, also the celestial religion. Even I. T. Shing previously noted that Svarnadvipa was a place where learned about the main philosophy of the basic Dharma, which spread to India as well as Tibet. Those who came to the Indonesian archipelago earlier, to study, not bringing the teachings of Buddhism from the country and then spreading it here. Fa Huan 337-422 ad. Sung Yun 518-521 AD. Haiyan Sang 602-664 ad. Wei Ning 664 AD 667 AD. I Sing 671-695 M. Atisa Dipamkara Shranyana, 1013 AD. Far 15 centuries before Christ, his ancestors under this philosophy were also brought by figures named Sanjaya, Sariputta, Svarnaksa, Svarnadvipa Dharmakirti to India as well as by Atisha to Tibet and the last figure to the archipelago, Dapunta Hyang. Svarnadvipa, centered on the location of the sun without shadow, equinox. According to I. T. Shing's notes, here are left traces of the source of the philosophy of the devotees of one God. The devotees are recorded as Para Hyangs, and sometimes called Para Hyangs, synonymous with Paryangan, or Pryangan. Paryangan, which is given the new meaning of a place to be happy, even though the root word is Para Hyangs, devotees of the holy God. Hyang is the original word of the archipelago. The ancestors of our ancestors, the Kakya Saka Arya, used the symbol sun with the symbol swastika, which implies dharma, universal harmony and balance. The symbol of sun as the source of light, the five colors of the main light, Pankawarna, which is the basis of the philosophy of life of the original teachings of the archipelago, are perfectly preserved in Bali. This is not from India. The details. The white light in the east is called Purwa, the place of Hyang Iswara. The red light in the south is called Daksina, the place of Hyang Brahma. The yellow light in the west is called Pasima, the place of Hyang Mahadeva. The black light in the north is called the north, the place of Hyang Wisnu. Understand once again, it is not Hindu India, when and who Indian missionaries who came to the archipelago brought the terms above. All colors of light in the center are called Madhya, where Hyang Siwa, Sang Hyang Siwa is a symbol of fusing of all light colors. Shiva, the fusion of light has been mistaken for a god of destruction. Footprints on the earth of Svarnadvipa. Samadhi, the position of the body sitting cross-legged, reads as meditation. In the local term it is called tapa. Stepping even higher is called Bethara. Narak. People who are qualified in pre-Islamic times are called Bathara Guru. The Malam, or Shanghyang Datu. Bodhi, a tree that grows in a holy area, Bodhisattva, becomes Bodhi. The root word is Bodhi, being the body, tribe from the Bundo Dui, lineage from pre-Islamic mothers. Kanyago, comes from the word Kandra Nago, is the husband of the mother goddess, who later became the pre-Islamic Kanyago tribe. Piliong, gets a new meaning, namely, choice. The root words are Pili, Dharma, and Hyang, God, which reflect earlier philosophies. Pitapang, became Pitopang, which was later called Patapang, is the initial word for virgin pay. Tapa, Anger Pay No Pang. Sankhayan, is given a new meaning. Cock trumpet, the beginning of this word is from the word Sangha, congregation, Hyang, God, the congregation who worship the one God. The Hyang River became a river. Sri Suruwasa becomes Surwaso. Jambu Dwipa, land of origin, changed to Guava Lipo, and was given a new meaning. Janbi you forgot, as long as the word was Jambu Dwipa, Jambu Island. The places and names above still exist today in Svarnadvipa, and after Islam the sites were largely unkempt and destroyed, because they had also been labeled not native to the archipelago by the invaders, namely, Hindu, Buddhist. Muaratakas site. In Svarnadvipa there was once a center for learning the main basic philosophy of Dharma, which is still depicted in Borobudur and perfectly preserved in Bali. This is what underlies the birth of Hindu, Buddhist and Indian Jaina teachings. Not the Muaratakas site is the center of Buddhism, as well as Palembang. The procession of contemplation of the archipelago's ancestors to worship is identified with the word Sembahyang. This is not animism, dynamism, or Hinduism. When will Indian Hindu missionaries come to remote parts of the archipelago? So all the sites as well as the original teachings in the archipelago are not based on one of the two Indian religions, but what is still being depicted on the Borobudur site is also recorded in Bali, is what underlies the growth of the three religions there, Dharma, Dharmak, Nusantara, the initial philosophy of monotheism, Hyang Widi Tungal. The original teachings of the archipelago are not called Hinduism. Before the New Order era, the original teachings in several regions in the archipelago had original names and characteristics. Some indigenous tribes with their respective regional beliefs, such as Dayaks who adhere to the religious network in central Kalimantan, Manasala and the Nualu people from Seram follow Norris, the original teachings the archipelago of the Tengger, Kapatayan, Badai tribes in Banten, Sunda Wiwitan, and Osing on the island of Java, Toraja, Central Sulawesi is known as Huang Matua, Toraja Alak Todolo, and Sumatra Batak Parmalim. The name of the original teachings of the archipelago has been named Hindu since the reign of the New Order era. Here the writer will explain the history of the original teachings of the archipelago until it is forced to be called Hindu. To explain it more easily we will take one example as Bali. Balinese teaching or Balinese religion is not Hindu India, the teachings of Bali are the original teachings of the archipelago. This is the explanation. Here we must be careful in understanding the differences in understanding of the discussions of this book, namely the original teachings of the archipelago and Hinduism, which needs to be understood or emphasized is that the original teachings of the archipelago are not Hinduism. Later, we will be able to understand in the next discussion that the original teachings of this archipelago underlie the teachings called Hinduism and Buddhism. The two main theories for the arrival of Indian Hinduism in Indonesia include that South Indian Sea traders brought Hinduism to the archipelago, and the second is that the Indonesian aristocrats welcomed Indian religion and culture, and that they were the first to adopt the spiritual notions that these masses followed. The islands of Indonesia adopt Indian and Buddhist Hindu notions. Combine it with indigenous and pre-existing folk beliefs. This is an opinion that has existed and is considered standard and correct, namely the teachings of Indian Hinduity, came to the land of the archipelago and was adopted by the ancient Nusantara people. According to the author, it is not correct, because in historical records, Indian Hindu missionaries have never left their area. This is because in the Indian Hindu tradition, Hindu religious scholars are not allowed to go outside their territory, in contrast to Buddhist monks. Jan Gonda in his book writes Indian Hindu influences to the archipelago since the beginning of the 1st century. Historical evidence is unclear about the diffusion of cultural and spiritual ideas from India. It is found in the Javanese legend that refers to the Saka era. It can be traced only to 78 AD. The story of the Mahabharata epic has been traced to Indonesian islands only until the 1st century AD. Tantu Pagelaran from the 14th century, which is a collection of ancient stories, does not mention the Hindu name in the text. This proves that the Hindu name was known after the 14th century and the author of Tantu Pagelaran is adhering to the teachings of the Nusantara archipelago, not Hindu India. Other archaeological evidence shows Tarumanagara as one of the earliest known kingdoms in Indonesia. So far it is considered and called to adhere to Hinduism. The Tarumanagara kingdom adheres to the original teachings of the archipelago, which historians call the Saiwa teachings, or to differentiate it from Indian Hinduism, it is sometimes referred to as Hindu Shiva. Below, we will understand the difference between the original teachings called Hindu Soul and Indian Hinduism. The native teachings of the archipelago that worship Shiva as one of them are not Hindu. It is the original teachings of the archipelago with one of the Shiva gods that underlie the teachings of Indian Hinduism. In West Java in the 5th century AD, arts and crafts from Indonesia, using Sanskrit extensively. The use of Sanskrit does not mean that the previous kingdom automatically became religious and adhered to teachings such as India. In those days, Sanskrit was like today's English. In international relations, the Sanskrit language was used. In some inscriptions, there are even two languages that are used in the local language and Sanskrit for the purpose of language. Sanskrit is the language between kingdoms, and the use of local languages is for the people themselves. Writing in two languages is commonly found on inscriptions that mention large and holy buildings such as Borobudur. Inscriptions that are inscribed in two languages and the name of the king and the number of years as the king's declaration at that time to commit to caring for sacred buildings. But many are misinterpreted that the number of years and the name of the king that is attached to the inscription are considered the number of years and the king of the building of the holy building. Likewise, ancient sacred buildings, temples excavated in Java and the western islands of Indonesia, as well as ancient inscriptions of the Kengal inscription found in Indonesia, confirm the word Shiva Lingam iconography, Dewi Parvati, Ganesha, Vishnu, Brahma, Arjuna, and the names of the gods. Others have the median to late 1st millennium AD numerals. Words found on the Prasasti with Shiva, Parvati, Ganesha, Vishnu, Brahma, Arjuna are words of original teachings that already exist in the archipelago, not from India. Ancient Chinese records about Fa Hin on his return journey from Sri Lanka to China in 414 AD mention that there were two religious schools that were considered Hindu in Java. While Chinese documents from the 8th century refer to the kingdom of King Sanjaya as holing, calling it very rich, and it coexisted peacefully with the people who Fahian considered to be Buddha and the rulers of Sailendra in the Kedu plain on the island of Java. The original teachings of the archipelago that were forced to change were called Hinduism. Indonesian philosophy is the general term for the philosophical tradition carried out by the people who inhabit the area, which is later called Indonesia. Indonesian philosophy is expressed in various living languages and is still spoken in Indonesia, around 587 languages, and the Indonesian language of unity, covering various schools of thought that have received Eastern and Western influences, in addition to their original philosophical themes. As seen in the original concepts and practices of Mupakat, rhymes, Pancasila, customary law, mutual cooperation, and kinship. Indonesian philosophy is as the cultural wealth of our own nation that is contained in our own culture. Thoughts, which are encapsulated in local customs and culture, as primordial thoughts are basic thought patterns that structure the entire building of cultural works. After Indonesia became independent from Dutch colonialism, it was officially recognized as a monotheistic religion. Furthermore, Indonesia requires a person to have a religion to obtain full Indonesian citizenship rights, and officially Indonesia does not recognize the indigenous beliefs or traditions of the archipelago. In 1952, the Indonesian Ministry of Religion declared Bali and other islands adhering to the indigenous teachings of the local archipelago by naming their traditions or beliefs with the name Hinduism. The local government of Bali, shocked by this official national policy, declared itself an autonomous religious area by distinguishing the indigenous beliefs of Bali from Indian Hinduism, namely Balinese Hinduism, in 1953. The Balinese government also contacted the government of India and former Dutch colonial officials for diplomatic and human rights support. A series of student and cultural exchange initiatives between Bali and India helped define the core principles behind Balinese Hinduism. Vedic chess, Upanishads, Puranas, Itihasa. In particular, the movement for socio-political fate in Bali in the mid-1950s led to a nonviolent passive resistance movement and a 1958 joint plea demanding that the Indonesian government recognize the teachings of Balad under the name Hindu Dharma. This joint petition quotes the following Sanskrit mantra from Hindu scriptures. The focus of the petition on the undivided is to fulfill the constitutional requirement that Indonesian citizens have a monotheistic belief in one God. The petitioner identified Ida Sanghyang Widiwasas as undivided. Divine absolute cosmic law. In Balinese, this term has two meanings: Lord of the universe, and Om Tat Sits Ekam Eva Advitiyam. Translate: Om, that is the essence of all that is, infinite, undivided. Joint application by Balinese Hindus, the 14th of June 1958. This creative expression fulfills the monotheistic requirements of the Indonesian Ministry of Religion in the previous sense, while the latter means defending the central notion of Dharma in the ancient texts of Hinduism. In 1959, Indonesian President Sukarno supported the petition and a section of the Hindu Bali mission was officially launched at the Ministry of Religion. Indonesian politics and religious affairs experienced turmoil from 1959 to 1962, with Sukarno dissolving the Constituent Assembly and weakening the impact of the communist movement on Indonesia alongside political Islam. Nevertheless, they officially identify their religion by the name Hindu. Because Hinduism was not a legal possibility for Indonesians until 1962, when it became the religion to be recognized as the fifth religion. This recognition was initially needed by religious organizations in Bali and needed for the sake of the existence of Balinese religion, which was recognized by the government, where the majority of local indigenous people changed their name to Hinduism. Between 1966 and 1980, along with Balinese Hindus, a large number of Indonesians in East Java, as well as parts of South Sulawesi, North Sumatra, Central and South Kalimantan who embraced local teachings or indigenous beliefs of the archipelago officially declared themselves Hindu, following their siblings in Bali to be recognized by the government. They politically organized themselves to suppress and defend their rights. The largest organization, Parisada Hindu Dharma Bali, changed its name to Parisada Hindu Dharma Indonesia, PHDI, in 1986, reflecting attempts to define Hinduism as a national concern and not just Balinese. While Hindus in Bali, with their majority, develop and practice their religion freely, on other islands in Indonesia they experience discrimination by local officials because people who still adhere to the local teachings, namely the original teachings of the archipelago, are considered to be people who have left Islam, the religion of the majority. However, Indonesia's central government supports people who name their teachings after Hinduism. In the 1960s, Hinduism was an umbrella that was also used by Indonesians adhering to Buddhism and Confucianism, at a time when neither was considered officially a religion. Furthermore, Hindu political activists in Indonesia work to protect people of that belief with the rights they earn at the Indonesian Ministry of Religion. In order to gain their official acceptance and rights in a Muslim-dominated country, Hinduism in Indonesia is politically forced to adapt. Today Hindu Dharma is one of the 5 officially recognized monotheistic religions in Indonesia. Local or indigenous religions that have continued to adhere to and have deep concern for the preservation of traditional ancestral religions, they state and name the teachings adopted should be called Hinduism. Considering this as a more flexible choice than Islam, this is what people still adhere to. Original teachings outside the island of Bali. In the early 70s, the indigenous Turajan people from Sulawesi were the first to realize this opportunity by seeking protection for their native religion under the umbrella of a religion called Hindu, followed by Karo Batak from Sumatra in 1977. In South Kalimantan, a movement naming their teachings with Hindu names has developed among the indigenous Dayak natives who were declared on the island in 1980. However, this is different from the case of the Javanese, as the conversion follows clear ethnic divisions. The indigenous Dayak people are exposed to a population of migrants and government officials sponsored by the government and dominated by the Madurs. Compared to their counterparts among adherents of indigenous Javanese teachings, many Dayak leaders also paid more attention to Balinese efforts to standardize Hindu ritual practices nationally, fear of the decline of their own peculiar and distinctive Kaharingan tradition and new external domination. On the other hand, most Javanese were slow to perceive and change their name to Hindu at the time, lacking distinct organizations along ethnic lines and fearing reprisals from powerful local Islamic organizations such as Nahdlatul Ulama (NU). Suharto's socio-political policies during his presidency from 1966 to, finally collapsing, in 1998. Their main concern was political philosophy, whose main mission was to find alternatives to the corrupt regime. It was this school that dared to challenge Suharto, after he succeeded in silencing all philosophers through violence. Prior to the emergence of this school of thought, there were several people who tried to fight Suharto in the 1970s, but they were hit hard in what history calls the 1973 ITB Bandung incident and the 1974 Malari incident. Since that practice of violence, philosophy can only be practiced in utopia, praxis and intellection separated from philosophy. Praxis is forbidden, and only reason may survive. The Suharto era, in philosophical terms, can be referred to as Arakandu philosophy, where all kinds and all schools of philosophy can live but cannot be practiced in reality. Philosophy only becomes academic practice, and is subjected to it. Pancasila became the only ideology and philosophy in that era, of course. Pancasila interpreted according to Suharto's interests, not Pancasila BPUPKI 1945, Hidayat 2004-49-55. Within the vicious circle of the Suharto regime emerged the braves who later broke the chains of the circle, and they are referred to here as post-Suharto philosophers. Several indigenous tribes with beliefs such as Sundanese Wiwitan, Torajalik Todolo, and Batak Malam, with their own unique original teachings and beliefs, have declared themselves as people who named Hindus in order to obey Indonesian law, while maintaining a tradition that is different from the mainstream of Indonesian Hinduism, which is dominated by the Balinese. These political factors and activities have brought about a revival of Hinduism beyond Balinese fortifications. Common beliefs and practices of the Hindu Dharma religion are a mixture of indigenous Balidan traditions resulting from a contemporary blend adopted by Indonesian law that allows only monotheistic beliefs based in the national ideology of Pancasila. Traditionally, the indigenous local teachings of the archipelago in Indonesia have had a divine pantheon, and the tradition of belief continues. Furthermore, the local teachings that have become Hindudi Indonesia provide freedom and flexibility to Hindus as to when, how and where to worship in performing their rituals. The belief in one supreme being is called Ida Sanghyang Widai Wasa, Sanghyang Tunggal, or Sanghyang Asintya. God Almighty in the Toraja culture of central Sulawesi is known as Puang Matua, in Alak for solo belief. The native religion of the archipelago. The indigenous religion of the archipelago is a traditional religion that existed before Islam, Catholic Christianity, Protestant Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism entered the archipelago, Indonesia. The fusion or diffusion of philosophies continued with the arrival of Hindu Brahmins and Buddhists from India between 322 BC 700 AD. They introduced Hindu culture and Buddhist culture to the natives, while the natives responded by synthesizing the two Indian philosophies into a new version, known as Tantrayana. This is clearly reflected in the building of the Borobudur Temple. Rabindranath Tagore, an Indian philosopher who visited Borobudur for the first time, recognized the temple as a non-Indian temple, because the relics engraved on it represented local workers dressed in authentic Javanese style. He also admits that the original Javanese dances inspired by Indian epics do not resemble Indian dances, even though the dances of the two countries originate from the same source. Dharma or original Dharmic. Konghuku and Buddhism. Two opposing philosophies in India, together with the original Javanese philosophy, could be reconciled in Indonesia by the geniuses Sambara Suryawarana, Mpu Prapanka, and Mpu Tantalar. List of indigenous religions of the archipelago beliefs. 1. Balinese religion, more commonly referred to as Hindu Bali or Hindu Dharma. 2. Alak Totolo, Tana Toraja. 3. Sunda Wiwitan Kanix, Banten. 4. Javanese Sundanese religion Kuningan, West Java. 5. Buhun, West Java. 6. Kejawan, Central Java and East Java. 7. Parmalime, North Sumatra. 8. Kaharingan, Kalimantan. 9. Tonas Walian, Minahasa, North Sulawesi. 10. Talatang, South Sulawesi. 11. Witu Telu, Lombok. 12. Norris, Saram Island, Maluku. 13. Mulahadi Nabalon Flow. 14. Marapu, Sumba. 15. Purwaduksino. 16. Budi Luhur. 17. Pakampetan. 18. Bolim. 19. Basora. 20. Samawi. 21. Sernagoli. 22. Kota Kiran Adanara Island, Flotim, NTT. Balinese religion. Often called Balinese Hinduism, it is also called the Hindu Dharma religion or Tirtha religion, the holy water religion. A form of religion that is generally practiced by the majority of Balinese tribes. Asintya is the great god in Balinese society whose teachings have been named Balinese Hinduism. Mention of God Asintya. There is nothing in Hinduism in India. This is what really distinguishes Hinduism in Bali, not from India. Balinese religion is a syncretism, amalgamation, a belief in Saiva, Vaishnava, and Brahma with other beliefs from outside Bali. The ancient remains known in Indonesia related to the original Balinese religion are Ganesha and Shiva statues found on Panaitan Island, Shiva statues found in Bejulu, Gianyar. The four caste groups resulting from the influence of Indian Hinduism in Bali, which became known by the term, are not the original teachings of Bali: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaisya, and Sudra. In the discussion later we will understand them. Balinese people have their own calendar system which is different from the Hindu calendar system in India and Nepal. Religious holidays for Balinese are generally calculated based on Wiwaran and Pawukan, a combination of Pankawara, Saptawara, and Wuku. However, there are also holidays that use the Saka calendar. Hari Raya based on warrants. Galungan, fall on. Buddha, Klawan, Dungulan Kuningan, fall on. Sanaskara, Klawan, Kuningan Saraswati, fall on. Sanaskara. Humanus, Watuguning. Science Day, worship of Sanghyang Aji Saraswati. Banyupanaru, fall on. Reddit, Pahing, Shinta. Pagerwasi. Hari Raya based in the Saka, Siwaratri, Nipi, Otonan calendar is a ceremony that is performed on birthdays, such as birthday celebrations, carried out for 210 days. Tooth cutting ceremony is a religious ceremony that must be carried out for its adherents. This ceremony is performed on adolescents or adults, for women who have experienced menstruation, and for men who have entered puberty. Naban ceremony is a procession for the funeral procession. This ceremony is an effort to speed up the return of the elements, substances that form the form of the mortal body. There are four main lontars that indicate the existence of the Pitra Yadnya ceremony. Namely Yama Purva Tadwa, regarding the offerings used, Yama Purana Tadwa, regarding the philosophy of liberation or the search for Atma and good and bad days of carrying out the ceremony, Yama Purwana Tadwa, regarding the schedule and forms of Karajahan Kajong, and Yama Tadwa, regarding the forms of buildings or means of ceremonies. The original teachings of the archipelago, especially the teachings and philosophy of religion in Bali, or authentic Balinese culture is not a culture based outside Bali. Especially not the culture of India. All that is mentioned above are things that are not found in India. Alak Totolo, Tana Toraja, South Sulawesi. South Sulawesi has four main ethnic groups: the Bugis, including shipbuilders and sailors; the Makassaris, traders and sailors; the Mandar tribe, traders, shipbuilders and sailors; and the Toraja, farmers in the highlands. The word Toraja comes from the Bugis language, Tariaha, which means, people who live in the land above. The Toraja tribe is famous for its funeral rituals, traditional houses and wood carvings. The Toraja funeral ritual is an important social event, usually attended by hundreds of people and lasting several days. The traditional Torajan belief system is a belief native to the local area burning from their earlier ancestors called alak, or road, sometimes translated as law. In Toraja myth, the ancestors of the Toraja people came from heaven by using a ladder which was later used by the Toraja tribe. The highest god, in the Ramayana, is said to have sent Sugriva down, while in the Mahabharata it is mentioned that he sent down Karna, and when he took the form of a horse he sent down Asvan, which is associated with the Sukla Yajurveda. Other names of Diva Surya include 1. Dinakara, who made the day. 2. Bhaskara, who makes light. 3. Vivasva, the radiant. 4. Mahira, who sucks water on earth. 5. Gradati, god of luminous objects, planets. 6. Karmasaksi, the great witness of every human act. 7. Martanda, descendants of Maridanda. Bhattara Surya, who is the god of the sun, is a god who is the support of living things in this natural world, especially plants and animals. Bhattara Suryadhar is known to be very powerful and has become one of the mainstay gods in heaven. Bhattara Surya is known to be happy to give heirlooms or offerings to those he chooses. This god is famous for having many children from various women, including Dui Kundi, who gave birth to Adipati Karna in the Mahabharata story. Bhattara Surya hit the stone when Hanuman blamed Bhattara Surya for the incident that happened to his mother Dui Anjani and her grandmother, who was cursed as a monument by her own husband. Hanuman felt Bhattara Surya had to be responsible, so that Hanuman with his study collected clouds from all over the world to cover the natural world so that the sun's rays could not reach the earth. Fortunately, this incident was resolved properly so that Hanuman volunteered to get rid of the clouds so that the natural world was exposed to sunlight again. In the Ramayana, Surya is mentioned as the father of King Sugriva, who helped Rama and Lakshmana in defeating King Ravana. He also trained Hanuman as his teacher. In the Mahabharata, Kunti received a mantra from the sage, Durvasa. If it was pronounced, he would be able to summon every god and bear children by him. In the book that the author wrote entitled Lemuria Atlantis Nusantara, it is explained that this teaching existed in the early civilization in Mukabumi, namely the Lemurian civilization in Indonesia. This teaching that worships the sun has grown to the corners of the world among the Egyptian civilization, namely the Ad, and came to the archipelago after the civilization or the descendants of the Ad, namely the Atlantic civilization, which Plato calls Atlantis. The thing below is about Balinese culture, which still records strongly about reverence for the sun. Ramayana. This book was written by Ed. Viswanathan, translated by N.P. Putra. Two famous epics or Ithihasa are Ramayana and Mahabharata. Rishi Valmiki wrote the first, and Rishi Veda Vyasa, son of Rishi Parasara, wrote the second. The story of Rishi Valmiki is in Uttarakanda, an addition to the great epic Ramayana. In the early part of his life, Valmiki was a street robber without a name. He used to rob passers-by to support his wife and children. One day Maharishi Narada passed by and the robbers attacked the holy man. Narada asks Valmiki why he robbed her. To support my family, replied the robber. When you rob someone you also incur a lot of sins. Does your family also want to bear your sins? Asked Maharishi. I'm sure they will, answered the robber. All right, said Maharishi. Why don't you tie me up here, go home, and ask everyone if they are ready to share your sin with the money you brought home? The robber agreed. He tied Maharishi to a tree and ran to his modest home. There he asked all members of his family with the question, will you share my sin? The entire family, including his wife, gave an emphatic, no. For the first time in his life, the robber understood the truth. With tears running down her cheeks she ran to Narada and begged for mercy. The Maharishi taught the robbers how to worship God. It is said that the robber was so immersed in meditation that the ants built a hill of ants around him. Finally, after years of meditation, a voice came out of nowhere asking the Samadhi robber to wake up from his meditation. The voice named him Valmiki, meaning, he who was born into an ant hill. This is Valmiki's story. When Valmiki was walking through the forest, he saw a pair of doves making love. While Maharshi was awestruck by the sight, an arrow passed him and hit the male dove. The dove flew down in sorrow and wept over her dead lover. Valmiki looked at the hunter and called him a bastard, but immediately felt that as a saint he didn't deserve to say that. Then a voice from the sky said, "Oh, Valmiki, your words are very poetic, don't be sad. This is the right time for you to write about Batara Rama." After receiving orders from that voice in the sky, Valmiki wrote the eternal poem Ramayana, the story of Batara Rama. Valmiki wrote it entirely as a narrative of a dove crying over him. At the start of each chapter, he makes the reader aware of the fact that it is a weeping bird that tells the great tale about Batara Rama. In short, Ramayana is the story of Batara Rama and Dui Sita. It is a single poem with 24,000 couplets. The short story is as follows. Once upon a time there was a king named Dasaratha who had 3 wives, Kausalya, Kaikeyi and Sumitra. Unfortunately, Dasaratha didn't have any children. Of his 3 wives, therefore he performed a special ceremony called Putra Kamesthi Yagam. From the ceremonial fire came out one panacea for all diseases, elixir, that the 3 queens drank. As a result, Kausalya had a son who was named Rama, Kaikeyi had a son who was named Bharata, and Sumitra had 2 sons who were named Lakshmana and Shatrughna. Rama and Lakshmana were close friends from childhood onward, as did Bharata and Shatrughna. When children enter adolescence, Rama married Dui Sita, an orphan daughter of the great king Janaka. After that, Raja Dasaratha thought to leave the throne and make the crown prince Rama king. The whole country rejoiced at the news, except for Kaikeyi and his servant Mandara. Finally, Queen Kaikeyi's jealousy and intrigue made Rama leave the kingdom and go to the forest with his wife Sita and his beloved brother Lakshmana. In the forest, poor Sita is kidnapped by Ravana, the monster king of Sri Lanka. Rama came to free Sita with the help of the Sugriva kings and his prime minister Hanuman. In one big battle, Rama destroys Ravana and his troops. Rama, together with Dui Sita, finally returned to the Ayodhya kingdom. Ramayana is poetry that is very popular with Hindus. The holy Deepavali festival is a celebration of Rama's victory over the giant king Ravana. Deepavali or Diwali, festival of lights, is celebrated all over India. Rama is the Awatara of Vishnu and Ramayana is a story that projects Hindu ideals or ideals about life. Rama is the perfect human, Sita is the perfect wife and Lakshmana is the perfect brother. There are various versions of the Ramayana. The Hindu version was written by Rishi Tulsi Das. The Malayalam version was written by Thuncheth Ezithchan. The original Ramayana text is written in exquisite Sanskrit. Ramayana on Prambanan. Let us have a little look at Prambanan. Prambanan is located in an ancient building complex, approximately 17 kilometers to the east of Yogyakarta, to be precise in Prambanan village, Bokoharjo district. The location is only about 100 meters from the Yogya Solo highway. In the inner court there are 2 rows of temples stretching north and south. In the west line there are 3 temples facing east. The temple that is located in the north is the Vishnu Temple, in the middle is the Shiva Temple, and in the south is the Brahma Temple. In the eastern line there are also 3 temples facing west. These 3 temples are called the Wahana, vehicle equals vehicle temple, because each temple is named according to the animal which is the god's ride whose temple is located in front of it. The temple facing Vishnu Temple is the Garuda Temple, the one facing the Shiva Temple is the Nandi Temple, ox, and the one facing Brahma Temple is the Angsa Temple. Thus, these 6 temples face each other to form a hallway. The Vishnu, Brahma, Angsa, Garuda and Nandi temples have the same shape and size, namely a square floor plan of 15 square meters with a height of 25 meters. At the north and south ends of the alley, there is a small temple opposite each other, which is called Kandi Apat. It is called the Shiva Temple because in this temple there is a Shiva statue. Shiva Temple is also known as the Rara Jongrang Temple, because in one of the rooms there is the Durga Mahishasramardani statue, which is often referred to as the Rara Jongrang statue. The body of the temple stands on a platform as high as 2.5 meters. The Shiva Temple, which is located in the middle of the western line, is the largest temple. The basic plan is in the form of a 34 square meters square with a height of 47 meters. Along the wall at the base of the temple are decorated with carvings of two kinds of ornaments which are located alternately. The first is a picture of a lion standing between two kalpataru trees. These decorations are found on all sides of the foot of the Shiva Temple and the 5 other large temples. On the foot walls on the north and south sides of the Shiva Temple, the lion decoration above is flanked by panels containing carvings of a pair of animals taking shelter under a kalpataru tree growing in a vase. The various animals depicted here include monkeys, peacocks, deer, rabbits, goats and dogs. Perched on top of each tree were 2 birds. On the other side of the temple's foot wall, both at the foot of the Shiva Temple and other large temples, panels with pictures of animals are replaced with panels bearing the images of canary, a pair of human-headed birds, who are also taking shelter under a kalpataru tree. The stairs to go up to the mature surface are located on the east side. The upper staircase is equipped with staircases whose walls are decorated with carvings of vines and animals. The base of the cheek is decorated with a wide-open carved dragon's head with the figure of a god in its mouth. On the left and right of the stairs there is a small temple with a pointed roof with Shiva statue carvings on all 4 sides of its body. At the top of the stairs there is a Padaraksa gate leading to the hallway on the surface of the shelf. Above the threshold of the gate is a beautiful Kalamakara carving. Behind the gate are a pair of small temples that have niches in their bodies. The niche contains the statues of Mahakala and Nandiswara, the Dorman gods. On the surface of the Bachur there is a veranda about 1 meter wide that surrounds the body of the temple. This hallway is equipped with a fence or ledge, so that it looks like a hallway without a roof. This ledge turns at an angle, dividing the bathroom wall into 6 sections. Along the body walls of the temple are decorated with rows of Lokapala statues. Lokapala is the guardian deities of the cardinal directions, such as Bayu, Indra, Varuna, Agni and Yama. Ramayana reliefs are carved along the inside of the ledge wall. This Ramayana story, carved clockwise, starting from the scene of Vishnu being asked to come down to earth by the kings to overcome the chaos made by Ravana and ending with the scene of the completion of the construction of a bridge across the ocean to the state of Alenka. The connection to the Ramayana story is a wall in the ledge of the Brahma Temple. The entrance to the rooms in the body of the temple is on a higher terrace. To reach the upper terrace, there are stairs in front of each door to the room. In the temple body, there are 4 rooms that surround the main room, which is located in the middle of the temple body. The entrance to the main room is through the room facing east. This room is an empty room without any statues or decorations. The entrance to the main room is located in line with the entrance to the eastern room. This main room is called the Shiva Room because in the middle of the room there is the Shiva Mahadeva statue, namely Shiva standing on a lotus with one hand raised in front of the chest and the other flat in front of the stomach. The Shiva statue is located on a 60 cm umpak foundation, in the form of a yoni with a drain along the edge of its surface. There is no connecting door between the Shiva room and the 3 rooms on the other side. The north, west, and south rooms have their own doors which are located directly in front of the stairs going up to the upper terrace. In the north room there is the Durga statue. Durga is depicted as an 8-armed goddess standing on the Nandi ox facing the Vishnu Temple. One of his right hand is resting on a mace, while the other 3 hands hold arrows, swords and discs, respectively. One left hand holds the head of the Asura, a dwarf giant who stands on the head of a Mahisa ox, while the other 3 hold a bow, shield and flowers. In the western room there is the Ganesha statue in a cross-legged position on the Padmasana, lotus flower throne, with the soles of the feet meeting each other. The palms of the hands resting on the knees in an outstretched position, while the trunk rests on the left arm. In the southern room there is the Agastya statue or Shiva Mahaguru. This statue has a slightly fat and bearded posture. Mahaguru Shiva is depicted in a standing position facing the Brahma Temple in the south with his right hand holding a prayer beads and the left hand holding a pitcher. Behind it, on the left is a fly repellent and on the right there is a trident. Vishnu Temple is located north of the Shiva Temple. The body of the temple stands on a platform that forms a ledge. The stairs to go up to the mature surface are located on the east side. Along the body walls of the temple are panels with carvings depicting Lokapala. Along the inner wall of the ledge are decorated with drag panels containing Krishnayana reliefs. Krishnayana is the story of Krishna's life from the time he was born until he succeeded in occupying the throne of Karajan Dwaraka. Above the ledge was lined with pearl decorations. Below the pearl, on the outer side of the ledge wall, there is a small niche with Kalamakara decorations on it. In the niche there are carvings depicting Vishnu as a priest sitting with various hand positions. Vishnu Temple only has one room with one door facing east. In the room, there is a statue of Vishnu standing on a yoni-shaped umpak. Vishnu is depicted as a four-handed god. The right hand holds the chakra, Vishnu's weapon, while the left hand holds the oyster. The front right hand holds the club and the left hand holds a lotus flower. The Brahma Temple is located south of the Shiva Temple. The body of the temple stands on a platform that forms a ledge. Along the body walls of the temple are panels with carvings depicting Lokapala. Along the inner wall of the ledge is decorated with a drag panel containing the continuation of the Ramayana story on the wall in the ledge of the Shiva Temple. This fragment of the Ramayana story in Brahma Temple tells the story of Rama's battle with the help of his younger brother, Lakshmana, and the monkey army against Ravana until Sita goes wandering into the forest after being expelled by Rama, who doubts her sanctity. Sita gave birth to her son in the forest under the protection of a hermit. Above the ledge was lined with pearl decorations. Below the pearl, facing out, is a small alcove decorated with Kalamakara on it. In the recesses there are carvings depicting Brahma as a priest sitting with various hand positions. Brahma Temple also only has one room with one door facing east. In the room, there is a Brahma statue standing on a yoni-shaped umpak. Brahma is depicted as a deity who has four faces, each facing a different direction, and two pairs of hands. On the forehead on the face facing forward is the third eye, which is called Urna. The Brahma statue was actually very beautiful, but now it is broken. The walls of the Brahma room are plain without decoration. On the walls on each side there is a protruding rock that serves as a place to place an oil lamp. Nandi Temple. This temple has one entrance staircase facing west, namely the Shiva Temple. Nandi is the holy ox of Lord Shiva. When compared to Garuda Temple and Angsa Temple, which are on the right and left, Nandi Temple has the same shape, only slightly bigger and taller in size. The body of the temple stands on a platform about 2 meters high. As found in the Shiva Temple, on the footwall there are two carved motifs that are located alternately. The first is a picture of a lion standing between two kalpataru trees, and the second is a picture of a pair of animals taking shelter under a kalpataru tree. Perched two birds on the tree. Images of this kind can also be found in other vehicle temples. Nandi Temple has one room in its body. The stairs and the entrance to the room are located on the west side. In the room there is a statue of Lembu Nandi, Shiva's vehicle, in a lying position facing west. In the room there are also two statues, namely Aka Surya, sun god, who was standing on a carriage pulled by 7 horses, and Aka Candra, moon god, who was standing on a carriage pulled by 10 horses. The walls of the room are not decorated, and there is a stone protruding from each side of the wall which serves as a place to put an oil lamp. The hallway walls around the body of the temple are also plain without sculptural decorations. Garuda Temple. This temple is located north of Nandi Temple, opposite Vishnu Temple. Garuda is Vishnu's mount. The shapes and decorations on the legs and stairs of Garuda Temple are similar to those in Nandi Temple. Even though it is called the Garuda Temple, there is no Garuda statue in the room inside the temple. On the floor of the room there is a Shiva statue which is smaller than the one in Shiva Temple. This statue was found embedded under the temple, and in fact the place is not in the room. We can know how obscure the description of Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma is in Prambanan. Can we find this in India if it is true that this teaching originated in India? Let's look again at the analysis we can get from historians about the teachings that exist in India, especially about Hinduism. From the explanation of Prambanan and the depiction of Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma, we can conclude that the teachings that appear in Prambanan are identical to Brahmanism, namely the teachings and philosophies that underlie Hindu, Jain and Buddhist teachings. Get to know Lord Shiva. He is the embodiment of the nature of tamas, centrifugal inertia. Tendency towards cessation or fusion. The real meaning of Shiva is on whom the universe is asleep after annihilation and before the next cycle of creation. Everyone who is born must die. Everything that is produced must be separated and destroyed. This is a law that cannot be broken. The principle that causes this separation, the force behind this destruction is Shiva. Shiva is much more than that. The separateness of the universe ends at the highest reduction, becoming infinite emptiness, the substratum of all existence, from which repeatedly emerge this seemingly infinite universe. Hindus, especially Hindus in India, believe that Lord Shiva has characteristics that match his character, namely, four-armed, each carrying trident, pine, prayer beads, genitry, jug. Three-eyed, tri-netra, on the headdress there is an Ardha Chandra, crescent moon, a tiger skin belt, a cobra snake's neck ornament. By Balinese, Lord Shiva is worshipped at Puradalem, as a god who returns humans to their elements, becoming Panka Maha Buddha. In the Pengitar Dewata Nawa Sangha, Nawa Dewata, Lord Shiva occupies the middle direction with 5 colors. He is armed with Padma and rides Nandini's ox. Sacred letters I and yes. He was worshipped at Baisakhi Temple. In other Indonesian traditions, Lord Shiva is sometimes referred to by the name Batara Guru. The three linga as a sacred symbol is a means of worshipping God in its manifestation as Sang Hyang Tripurusa. God is worshipped as Sang Hyang Tripurusa in his function as the great soul of the universe. Shiva as the soul of Bur Loka. Sada Shiva as a great soul. Bhuva Loka and Parama Shiva as the souls of Swaloka. The aim of worshipping God as the great soul Shiva of Bur Loka is to attain liking without Wali Duaka. As Sada Shiva to achieve happiness that has no root and no end. As Parama Shiva to achieve immeasurable happiness that cannot be imagined in its real form and its characteristics cannot be given. This is stated in the sacred literature of Rihaspati Tattva. Danghyang Markandeya. In the 8th century he enlightened on Mount Di Hyang, now Diong, East Java, that the Palanga building in Tolangkir, now Baisakhi, had to be planted with Penka Dadu consisting of the elements gold, silver, copper, iron, and rubies. Residing in Taro, Tegal Lalong, Gyanyar, he confirmed the teachings of Shiva Siddhanta to his followers in the form of rituals. Surya Swana, Bibali Bantan, and Pekup Date. Because all rituals use offerings or Bibali, at that time this religion was called Balinese religion. The area where he lives is called Bali. So what was named Bali at first was only the Taro area, but later the island was called Bali because residents all over the island practiced Shiva Siddhanta's teachings according to Danghyang Markandeya's instructions using Bibali or Bantan. Apart from Baisakhi, he also built other Sad Kayangan temples, namely, Bachur, Sukawana, Badakuru, Andakasa, and Lempayong. He also got enlightened when Hyang Widi manifested himself as a bright, sparkling light that resembled the sun and moon. Therefore, he determined that the color red is a symbol of the sun and white is a symbol of the moon used in decorations at the temple, among others, in the form of Idar, Lelentek. In addition, he introduced Tumpak Kandong Day to ask for safety to Hyang Widi, called Rare Angan who created blood, and Tumpak Pengatag Day in honor of Hyang Widi, called Sanghyang Tumua who created sap. Mpu White Ho. After Danghyang Markandeya Moksa, Mpu Sengkulputi continued and completed the Bibali ritual, among others, by making interesting variations and decorations for various types of offerings by adding other plant elements such as betel leaves, banana leaves, coconut leaves, fruits, bananas, coconut, and seeds, rice, injan, peanuts, komak. The forms of offerings created include Kanong Sari, Kanong Tubugan, Kanong Raka, Daksina, Squeezed, Panyanang, Tahenan, Segahan, Li, 5-colored rice, Prayasada, Dermangala, Pungu Pungu, Bikala, Ulap Namb, etc. Bantan was made attractive and beautiful to inspire a sense of devotion to Hyang Widi so that spiritual vibrations would arise. In addition, he educated his followers to become Sulinga with the titles Duku, Prawaya, and Kabayan. He is also a pioneer in making statues, pralinga and statues of gods made of stone, wood, or metal as a means of concentration in the worship of Hyang Widi. No less important, he introduced the procedures for implementing Payadalan Day commemoration at Baisakhi Temple and other temples, the rituals of the holidays, Gulungan, Kuningan, Pagerwesi, Nipi. His official position is Sulinga in charge of Pura Baisakhi and other temples that have been established by Danghyang Markandeya. Mpu curse. In the 10th century came to Bali a Brahmana from Majapahit who played a very big role in the progress of religion in Bali. As mentioned by Oleb R. Goris, during the Old Balinese era, a sectarian religious life developed. There are 9 sects that developed during the Old Bali, including the Pasupada, Bhairava, Shidanta, Vaisnava, Bhatta, Brahma, Rezi, Sora and Ganapatya sects. Among these sects Shiva Siddhanta was the dominant sect. Each sect worships certain gods as Istatawada or as their main god with certain nyasa, symbols, and believes that Istatawada is the foremost while others are considered inferior. These differences eventually led to conflicts between one sect and another, which led to tensions and disputes within the Balinese Aga community. This is one of the factors causing security and order disturbances in society which have a negative impact on almost all aspects of people's lives. This negative effect not only affects the village concerned, but extends to the royal government so that the wheels of government become less smooth and disturbed. In such conditions, King Gunapraya Dharmapatni, Udayana Warmadewa need to bring in clergy from East Java whom Gunapraya Dharmapatni has known for a long time while he was in East Java. Therefore, King Gunapraya Dharmapatni, Udayana Warmadewa agreed to bring in 4 Brahmin brothers, namely 1. Mpu Semaru, from the Shiva sect arrived in Bali on Friday Klawan, Wuku Pujat, coinciding with the day of Purnamaning Kawalu, Kandra Sankala Jadma Saradmaya face, namely the year of Kaka 921 and then celebrated in Vaisakhi. 2. Mpu Ghana, adherents of the Jnanapatya sect arrived in Bali on Monday Klawan, Wuku Kuningan on the 7th year of Kaka year 922, then celebrated at Gelgal. 3. Mpu Kucharan, Buddhists from the Mahayana sect arrived in Bali on Wednesday Klawan Wuku Pahang, Madaraksa Ping 6 date, Kandra Sankala Agni Babahan Tribur. Kaka 923 year later celebrated in Silayukti Padang. 4. Mpu Najaya, Brahmaists arrived in Bali on Thursday Umanis, Wuku Dungulan, coincided with Sasi Kadasa, Pradipada Sukla, 1st, Kandra Sankala Fasesa Dikwatanku, Kaka year 928 then paraded on the hill of Blibus Lempayong. In East Java, there are 5 siblings, namely his youngest brother, Mpu Barada, who was left in East Java and has an astrology in Lamadulas, Pajarakan. These 5 Brahmins are commonly called Panka Pandita or Panka Tirtha, because they have carried out the ceremony of Vijati, which is carrying out the Dharma Kabar Amanan. In an assembly meeting held at Bata Anyar, preceding Pajang village, which was attended by elements of the 3 forces at that time, namely, from the Mahayana Buddhist side represented by Mpu Kucharan who was also the chairman of the session, from the Siwa side represented by Mpu Semaru from the 6 sects whose leaders were Balinese Aga. In the assembly meeting Mpu Kucharan discussed how to simplify religion in Bali, which consists of various sects. At that time, all attendees agreed to uphold the Trimurti Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva understanding to become the religious core in Bali and which deserves to be considered as the embodiment or manifestation of Sanghyang Widiwasa. The consensus reached at that time was the decision of the royal government, which stipulated that all schools of thought in Bali be accommodated in one container called Shiva Buddha, as the compound of Shiva and Buddha. Since then, Shiva Buddhists have to build 3 sacred buildings, temples, to worship Sanghyang Widiwasa, in each of which is named 1. Pura Desa Bail Aging to worship the glory of Brahma, as the embodiment of Sanghyang Widiwasa God. 2. Pusa Temple to worship Vishnu's honor as the embodiment of Sanghyang Widiwasa. 3. Pura Dalem to worship the glory of Bhattari Durga, namely the act of Bhattara Shiva as the embodiment of Sanghyang Widiwasa. The 3 temples are called the Kayangantiga temple, which is a symbol of the unity of the Buddhist Shiva people in Bali. In Samuantiga an organization was also born, the Desa Pakraman, which is better known as the Desa Adat. And since then various changes have been created by Mpu Kucharan, both in the political, social and spiritual fields. If before these 4 Brahmins were all, the inscription is written using Old Balinese characters, then after that it began to be written in Old Javanese Kawi. Finally, at the former meeting place, a temple was built which was named Pura Samuantiga. For Hyang Witti's revelations, he had brilliant thoughts inviting Hindus in Bali to develop the concept of Trimurti in the form of the symbol of the Kemulan Rong Tiga Palinga in each housing, Kayangan Tiga Temple in each traditional village, and the development of the Kijuling Krateg Brahma temples, Batumadeg, Vishnu, and Dark Shiva, as well as Padma Tiga, in Basaki. Trimurti understanding is the worship of Hyang Witti's manifestation in a horizontal position, Pangaidar Ider. Mpu armature beads. After Mpu Senkulputi Moksa, his duties were replaced by Mpu Manik Ankaran. He is a Brahmin from Majapahit, son of Danghyang Siddhamitra. With the intention that his son would not return to Java and to protect Bali from outside influences, the isthmus connecting Java and Bali was cut off by using the inner strength of Danghyang Siddhamitra. The isthmus that has broken up is called Sagara Rupak. Mpu Jaiwaya. He spread the Mahayana Buddhism of the Tantri sect, especially to the aristocracy during the Warmadewa dynasty, 9th century. The remnants of these teachings are now found in the form of belief in mystical powers related to arrogance Tenjit, and regents for the supernatural powers of weapons of war, masks, barongs. Danghyang Dwajendra came to Bali in the 14th century when the Bali Dwaipa kingdom was led by Dalem Watarangong. On Hyang Witti's revelations in Puran Sak, Jembrana, he had brilliant thoughts that in Bali it was necessary to develop a Tripurusa understanding, namely the worship of Hyang Witti in his manifestations as Shiva, Sada Shiva, and Parama Shiva. The form of the building for worship is Padmasari or Padmasana. If the Trimurti concept of Mpu Kucharan is worship of Hyang Witti in a horizontal position, then the Tripurusa concept is worship of Hyang Witti in a vertical position. At that time Bali Dwaipa reached its golden age, because all areas of people's life were well organized. The rights and obligations of the aristocrats are regulated, customary religious laws and judiciary are enforced, inscriptions containing the ancestral lineages of each Saro clan are compiled. A Wig Desa Adat Pekraman was created, Subic organizations were developed and religious activities were increased. In addition, he also encourages the creation of high-quality literary works in the form of lontar, kidung or kekawin writing. His famous literary works include Sebun Bangkung, Sara Kusuma, Legarong, Mahi Salangit, Dharma Pachuchar, Wilit Damung Saat, Gagatuk Menor, Brati Sazana, Shiva Sazana, Aji Pengukiran. He is also active in visiting people in various villages to give discourse Dharma. The historical witness of this activity is the establishment of temples to worship him in places where he once lived guiding people, for example, Puran Sak, Rambut Siwi, Pakandungan, Hulu Watu, Bukit Gong, Bukit Payong, Sakanan, Air Jerik, Tugu, Tengkulak, Goa Lawa, Panjak Badu, Suranadi, Lombok Pangajengan, Maseti, Box Tenjit, Amertasari, Melanting, Pulaki, Bukkabe, Dalem Gandamayu, Paak Tentik. The 6 sacred figures have given distinctive characteristics to Hindu life in Bali so that they have created special tattoos and rituals that distinguish Hindu Balinese from Hinduism outside Bali. In the field of Tattva, for example, the most prominent characteristic is the worship of Hyang Witti in the manifestation of Trimurti and Tripurusa in the form of Palinga Kemulan Rongtiga and Padmasana developed by Mpu Kucharan and Mpu Danghyang Narartha respectively. In the field of ritual, the most important characteristic of Hindu Bali is the Bibali or Bantang, which was developed by Danghyang Markandeya and Mpu Senkulputi. Brahmana Siwa believes Mpu Danghyang Dwajendra is the founder of the Wangsa residence. Mpu Danghyang Astapaka, Mpu Katrangan, is the founder of the Buddhist Brahmana Wangsa. Pasek clan Sanak Sapta Rezi believes Mpu Najaya is the founder of the Pasek people. And so on. In fact, seen from Sapinda's relationship as a different Gotra, there are those who have a relationship with one Sapinda. For example, Wangsa Brahmana Shiva does not have family relationships based on Gotra with the Pasek relatives of Sapta Rezi. But if it is seen from the lineage of the Brahmana Shiva family, Sapinda has a relationship with the Sapinda residents of Pasek Sanak Sapta Rezi. Because the ancestors of Mpu Danghyang Dwajendra as the founder of the Shiva Brahmana were the descendants of Mpu Bharata. Meanwhile, Mpu has brothers with Mpu Gni Jaya, the ancestor of Pasek residents, Sanak Sapta Rezi. Seen from the point of view of the Sapinda Wangsa Brahmana Siwa, one family with the Paseksonic residents Sapta Rezi. Likewise, some other residents have a different Gotra but one Sapinda. Generally, many community groups or soros in Bali come from Sang Pankatirtha. What is meant by Sang Pankatirtha is the 5 Pandita brothers who have existed in putting religious values in Bali. The 5 Panditas are Mpu Najaya, Mpu Kucharan, Mpu Bharata, Mpu Gana, Mpu Semaru. Pravara is a family form which is based in the sameness of the name of the Gadapuja. The word Pravara in Sanskrit means the most important. In our daily interactions, we often hear the terms forced Vaisnava citizens, Siwapaksa citizens, forced Buddhists or Saktas and so on. It describes the family form according to the Pravara system. In the Rig Veda it is very clear that God is one but many names are given by Vipras or saints. This family form based in the similarity of the name of God which empirical scientists call it the sect. Whereas in Hindu terms it is called Sampradaya Parampara. In Lontar, we often read that there are saints who are brothers in the Sapinda way but are different in terms of force so that they are not referred to as one family in the Pravara sense. Dasa Awatara. Here are 10 reincarnations Awatara of Lord Vishnu. 1. Matsya Awatara, the fish. The story of Matsya can be listened to in the Matsya Purana and other Puranas. It is said that when King Satyavrata, better known as Vivaswatamanu, washes his hands in the river, a small fish approached his hand and the Rajat knew that the fish was asking for protection. Finally he raised the fish. He prepared a small pond as a place for the fish to live. But gradually the advertisement grew bigger, almost filling the entire pond. Finally he moved the fish to a bigger pond. This incident kept happening over and over again until finally he realized that the fish he was keeping was no ordinary fish. Finally, through the ceremony, it was discovered that the fish was an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. In another version, the fish is carried to the ocean. The fish himself conveyed the news that on earth there would be a great flood for 7 days. The fish ordered the king to make a large ark to save himself from the great flood, and fill the ark with various living things, each of which amounted to a pair, female and male, and brought medicines, food, seeds of all kinds of plants, and invited Saptarasi, 7 prophets. The fish also added that after the great flood had arrived, it was hoped that the ark would be tied to the fish's horn with the dragon Basuki as the rope. After delivering the entire message, the magic fish disappeared. According to Matsya Purana, 100 years later, a great drought hit the earth, and many creatures died of starvation. Then, the sky was filled with 7 kinds of clouds that poured out unstoppable torrential rain. Quickly, the water that was poured out covered the land on earth. Because Vivaswata Manu had made the ark according to the instructions given by Vishnu, he and his followers survived the disaster. 2. Kirma Awatara, the tortoise. Dates are Vishnu's second Awatara incarnation in the form of a giant tortoise. These Awatara appeared during the Satyayuga era. According to the Adiparva book, the turtle is named Akupa. According to various Puranas, Vishnu took the form of a turtle date and floated in a sea of milk, Sarasagara or Kesararnawa. It is said that at the bottom of the sea there are treasures and water that can make the drinker live eternally. The gods and asuras are competing to get it. For the sea reservoir, they need a tool and a mountain called Mandara is used to stir it. The gods and the asuras tied the mountain with the dragon Vasuki and turned the mountain. The dates support the base of the mountain with their shells. Dewa Indra holds the top of the mountain so that it does not rise above. After a long time Tyrda Amerta was obtained and Lord Vishnu took over. The story of Kirma Awatara arises from the story of the Mandaragiri screening contained in the Adiparva book. It is said that during the time of Satyayuga, the gods and asuras Rakshasa met at the top of the Mahameru mountain to find a way to get Tyrda Amerta, which is holy water that can make life immortal. Sang Hyang Narayana, Vishnu, said, "If you want the Tyrda Amerta, stir the sea of Kesara, Sarasagara, because in the ocean there is Tyrda Amerta. Therefore, do it." After hearing Sang Hyang Narayana's order, the Devas and Asuran went out to the sea of Kesara. There is a mountain called Mount Mandara, Mandaragiri, in Senkadwipa, Senka Island, 11,000 yojanas high. The mountain was uprooted by Sang Anantaboga and everything in it. After obtaining permission from Dewa Samudra, Mount Mandara was dropped in the Sira Sea as a stick to stir the ocean. A giant turtle date named Akupa, which is said to be the incarnation of Vishnu, forms the base of the mountain. He was told to hold Mount Mandara so as not to drown. Naga Basuki was used as a rope, twisting the slopes of the mountain. Dewa Indrama occupies the peak, Suapaya the mountain does not soar upwards. Once ready, the gods, Rakshasa and Asuras began to rotate Mount Mandara using the dragon Basuki as rope. The gods hold his tail while the Asuras and Rakshasas hold his head. They fought so hard for the throne of Amerta that the sea rumbled. Mount Mandara lights up, Naga Baku spits out, causing the Asuras and giants to overheat. Then Dewa Indra summoned the cloudy clouds which then flushed the Asuras and Rakshasas. The fat of all animals in Mount Mandara along with the forest wood oil makes the waters of Karara thickened, the screening of Mount Mandara has been intensified. Generation of poison when the oceans are stirred up, a deadly poison called halahala spreads out. The poison can kill all living things. Lord Shiva then drank the poison, then his neck turned blue and was called Nilakantha, Sanskrit. Nila, blue, Kantha, throat. After that, various deities, animals, and treasures appeared, namely, Sura, the goddess who created wine, Asera, the celestial maidens of Kaustuba, the most precious jewel in the world, Ukaisrawa, horse of the Kalpareksa gods, the tree that can fulfill the wishes of Kamadhanu, the first cow and the mother of all cows Arawada, the vehicle of Dewa Indra Lakshmi, the goddess of luck and prosperity. Finally Dhanwantari came out carrying a jug filled with Tyrda Amerta. Since the Dewas already had a lot of share while the Asuras and Rakshasas had no share, the Asuras and the Rakshasas wanted the Tyrda Amerta to be theirs. Finally Tyrda Amerta was on the side of the Asuras and Rakshasa and Mount Mandara was returned to its place of origin, Sankadwipa. The struggle for Tyrda Amerta. Seeing that it is in the hands of the Asuras and Rakshasas, Lord Vishnu thought of a strategy how to reclaim it. Finally Lord Vishnu changed his form into a very beautiful woman, named Mohini. The beautiful woman approached the Asuras and Rakshasas. They are very happy and captivated by the beauty of the incarnate woman Vishnu. Unaware of their deception, they handed over Tyrda Amerta to Mohini. After getting Tyrda, the woman ran away and changed her form back to Lord Vishnu. Seeing this, the Asuras and Rakshasa became enraged. Then there was a war between the gods and the Asuras and the giants. The battle took place for a very long time and both sides were equally powerful. In order for the battle to end immediately, Lord Vishnu created a chakra weapon capable of snatching up the Asuras and giants. Then they ran abruptly because they had suffered defeat. Finally, Tyrda Amerta was on the side of the gods. The gods then flew to Vishnuloka, the residence of Lord Vishnu, and there they drank Tyrda Amerta so that they could live eternally. A Rakshasa who was the son of Sangviprasiti and Sang Singika knew about it, then he changed his form to become a god and participated in drinking Tyrda Amerta. This was discovered by Dewa Aditya and Chandra, who then reported it to Lord Vishnu. Dewa Vishnu then took out his chakra weapon and cut off the giant's neck, just when the Tyrda Amerta had reached his throat. The giant's body was dead, but his head was still alive because the Tyrda Amerta had touched his throat. The Rakshasa was angry with Lord Aditya and Chandra, and vowed to eat them by the middle of the month. 3. Varaha Awatara, the wild boar. Varaha is the third Awatara incarnation of Lord Vishnu in the form of a wild boar. These Awatara appeared during the Satyayuga, Age of Truth. The full story of Varaha Awatara is in the Varaha Purana and other Purana books. According to Hindu mythology, in the time of Satyayuga, the Age of Truth, there was a giant named Hiranyaksa, the younger brother of the giant Hiranyakasipu. Both are the Daitya giants. Hiranyaksa was about to drown Prithvi, planet Earth, into the cosmic ocean, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Seeing the world about to end, Vishnu transformed into a wild boar with two long fangs sticking out with the aim of supporting the earth that was dropped by Hiranyaksa. The rescue effort carried out by Varaha did not go smoothly because Hiranyaksa blocked him. Then there was a fierce battle between the giant Hiranyaksa and Lord Vishnu. It is said that this battle occurred thousands of years ago and took thousands of years as well. In the end, Lord Vishnu won. After he won the battle, he raised the earth as round as a ball with two long fangs sticking out of the cosmic ocean, and put the earth back into its orbit. After that, Lord Vishnu married the mother goddess in this form. Narasimha Awatara. Narasingha. Narasimha is an Awatara incarnation of Vishnu who came down to the world, has a human form with a foreign head, has sharp nails like a sword, and has many hands holding weapons. Narasingha is a symbol of the guardian deity who protects every devotee of Vishnu when in danger. According to the Purana, at the end of the Satyayuga, age of truth, an Asura giant, king named Hiranyakasipu hated everything related to Vishnu, and he was not happy when in his kingdom there were people who worshipped Vishnu. Because many years ago, his younger brother, Hiranyaksa, was killed by Varaha, Awatara Vishnu. In order to become powerful, he performed very heavy asceticism, and only focused his thoughts on Lord Brahma. After Brahma deigned to appear and ask his request, Hiranyakasipu asked that he be given eternal life, would not die and could not be killed. But Lord Brahma refused, and told him to ask another request. Finally Hiranyakashipu asked that he could not be killed by humans, animals or gods, could not be killed in the morning, day or night, could not be killed on land, water, fire, or air, could not be killed inside or outside the house, and not can be killed by all kinds of weapons. Hearing this request, Lord Brahma granted it. While he was leaving his house to ask for blessings, the gods, led by Lord Indra, stormed his house. Narada came to save Hiranyakasipu's innocent wife, Lilawati. When Lilawati left home, her child was born and was given the name Prahlada. The child was educated by Narada to be a virtuous child, told him to become a devotee of Vishnu, and distance himself from his father's violent qualities. Narasingha killed Hiranyakashipu. Knowing the gods were protecting his wife, Hiranyakasipu became very angry. He hated Lord Vishnu even more, and his own son, Prahlada, who was now a devotee of Vishnu. However, every time he killed his son, he always never succeeded because he was prevented by supernatural powers which were protection from Lord Vishnu. He was annoyed because he always failed by the power of Lord Vishnu, but he was unable to witness Lord Vishnu protecting Prahlada directly. He challenged Prahlada to show Lord Vishnu. Prahlada replied, "He is everywhere, he is here, and he will appear." Hearing that answer, his father was very angry, went berserk and destroyed the pillars of his house. Suddenly there was an electrifying voice. It was at this time that Lord Vishnu as Narasingha appeared from the pillar that Hiranyakasipu had destroyed. Narasingha came to save Prahlada from his father's wrath, as well as to kill Hiranyakasipu. However, by the grace of Brahma, Hiranyakasipu could not die if he was not killed at the right time, place and conditions. So that the blessings of Lord Brahma would not take effect, he chose the human form with the head of a lion to kill Hiranyakasipu. He also chose the right time and place. Finally, the blessings of Lord Brahma do not apply. Narasingha managed to shred Hiranyakasipu's stomach. Finally Hiranyakasipu was killed by Narasingha, because he was not killed by humans, animals, or gods. He was killed not at morning, noon, or night, but at dusk. He was killed not outside or inside the house but on the porch. He was killed not on land, water, fire, or air, but in Narasingha's lap. He was killed not with a gun, but with nails. Vamana Awatara. Vamana is the fifth Awatara Vishnu, descended during the Tretayuga era, as the son of Aditi and Kashyapa, a Brahmin. He, Vishnu, descended into the world to uphold the truth and teach a lesson to Balinese Karaja, Mahabali, and Asura, grandson of Prahlada. The king of Bali had captured heaven from the power of Lord Indra. Because of that Vishnu intervened and incarnated in the world, punishing the king of Bali. Vamana Awatara is depicted as a Brahmana with the body of a child carrying an umbrella. Vamana Awatara is the first incarnation of Lord Vishnu who takes a complete human form, even though he is a tiny Brahmin. Vamana is sometimes also known as Upendra. The story of Vamana Awatara is published in the book Bhagavata Purana. According to the story in the book, Vamana as a little Brahmin came to the palace of the king of Bali because at that time the king of Bali invited all the Brahmins to be given gifts. He had already been advised by Sukracarya not to give any gifts to Brahmins that were strange and other than usual. At the time of giving the gift, a little Brahmin appeared among the Brahmins who were very old. The Brahmin will also be rewarded by Bali. The little Brahmana asked for a land area of 3 inches measured by his footsteps. The king of Bali was arrogant and forgot about Sukracarya's advice. He ordered the little Brahmin to take a step. At that same time, the Brahmin grew and grew. With its enormous size, it is able to step in heaven and earth at the same time. In the first step, he stepped on heaven. In the second step, he stepped on the earth. In the third step, because there was no land on him to stand on, Bali gave up his head. Since then, Balinese rule is over. Impressed by Balinese generosity, Vamana gave him the title Mahabali. He also promised that someday Bali will become Indra in the next Manvantara. Parasurama Awatara. Parasurama in Indonesia is sometimes called Ramaparasu, the name of a Saranjiwan, immortal character. Literally, the name Parashurama means Rama who is armed with an axe. Another name is Bhargava, which means descendants of Maharajabregu. He himself is known as the 6th Avatara Vishnu and lived in the Tretayuga era. In this era, many knights are fighting with each other, causing chaos in the world. So, Vishnu as the guardian of the universe was born into the world as a Brahmin with a haunted form, namely Rama the son of Jamadagni, to destroy the knights. The story of youth Parasurama is the youngest son of Jamadagni, a sage who is a descendant of Bregu. That is why he is also known by the nickname Bhargava. At birth Jamadagni named his son Rama. As an adult, Rama was also known by the nickname Parasurama because he always carried an axe as his weapon. Apart from that, Parasurama also had another weapon in the form of an unusually large bow. When he was young, Paraswama had killed his own mother, who was named Renuka. This was due to Renuka's mistake in serving Jamadagni's needs, which caused her husband to become angry. Jamadagni then ordered his sons to kill their mother. He promised to grant whatever their request. Even so, as a child, Jamadagni's sons, except for Parasurama, no one was willing to do it. Jamadagni was getting angry and cursed them to stone. Parasurama as the youngest and smartest son turned out to be willing to kill his own mother. After Renuka's death, he made a request according to Jamadagni's promise. These requests include, Jamadagni must revive and accept Renuka again, as well as return his 4 older brothers to human form. Jamadagni also felt proud and fulfilled all of Parasurama's requests. Eradicating the knights in Parasurama's time, the peace of the world was confused by the actions of knights who liked to fight with each other. Parasurama rose to destroy them, who should have acted as protectors of the weak. Countless knights, be it kings or princes, were killed by the axe and arrows of Rama, the son of Jamadagni. It is said that Parasurama was determined to wipe out all the knights from the face of the earth. He is even said to have traveled the world 3 times. After feeling enough, Parasurama also held a holy sacrifice at a place called Samantapansaka. Later in the next era, the place was known as Kurukshetra and was considered a holy land, which became the scene of a great civil war between the Pandavas and the Kaurava families. The special reason why Parasurama was determined to wipe out the knights was due to the act of the king of the Hehaya kingdom named Kartavirya Arjuna, who had seized Jamadagni's property. Parasurama was angry and killed the king. But at the next opportunity, Kartavirya Arjuna's children took revenge by killing Jamadagni. Jamadagni's death increased Parasurama's hatred for the entire warrior faction. Meeting other Vishnu Awatara, although the number of knights killed by Parasurama is innumerable, there are still some left alive. Among other things, from Wangsa Surya, who was domiciled in Ayodhya, Kosala kingdom. One of the descendants of the dynasty was Sri Rama, a son of Dasaratha. One day he won a competition in the Mithila kingdom to win Sita, the country's daughter. The competition that was held was to unfold the heirloom bow given by Shiva. Of the many applicants, only Sri Rama was able to lift, even break the bow. The roar due to the breaking of Shiva's bow was heard by Parasurama in his hermitage. He also came to Mithila's palace to challenge Rama, who he thought was being presumptuous. Sri Rama gently managed to calm Parasurama's anger, who then returned to his hermitage. This was an event for a fellow Awatara Vishnu to meet, because at that time Vishnu had reincarnated as Rama while Parasurama himself was still alive. Parasurama's role as Vishnu's Awatara at that time had ended, but as a Saranjivan, he lived eternally. In the Dwaparayuga era, Vishnu was reborn as Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. At that time Parasurama became the teacher of Krishna's cousin, Karna, who disguised himself as the son of a Brahmin. After teaching various magical sciences, only then did Parasurama know that Karna came from the knights. He also cursed that Karna would forget all the powers he had learned at his last battle. The curse becomes a reality when Karna confronts her own younger brother, Arjuna, in a war in Kurukshetra. Parasurama is believed to be still alive today. It is said that at this time he was in seclusion at the top of a mountain, or in the wilderness. Rama Awatara. Ramacandra is a famous legendary king who lived during the Tretayuga era, a descendant of the Surya dynasty or Suryavamsa. He came from the Kosala kingdom which had its capital Ayodhya. According to the Hindu view, he is the seventh Lord Vishnu who came to earth during the Tretayuga era. His famous heroic figures and stories are told in an ancient Hindu literature called the Ramayana, spread from South Asia to Southeast Asia. Born as the eldest son of King Dasaratha and Kausalya, he was seen as Maryada Purushottama, which means perfect human. As an adult, Rama won competitions and became known as Devi Sita, the incarnation of Devi Lakshmi. Rama in the Indian version has twins, namely Kusa and Lawa. Ram, in the Rigveda and Atharvaveda books, is an adjective meaning dark, black, or a noun meaning darkness. The feminine form of the adjective is Rami. Two Rama appear in the Vedic literature, under the surnames Margavayadan Apadaswini. Another Rama appears under the surname of Jamadag, who is thought to be the writer of the Rigveda hymn. According to Monier Williams, 3 Rama were honored after the Vedic era, namely Ramacandra, Rama Moon, son of Dasaratha, a descendant of Raghu from the Solar dynasty. Parashu Rama, Rama with the axe, the 6th avatar of Vishnu, is sometimes considered his Jamadag, or as Bhargava Rama, descendant of Bregu, a Chiranjeevan or immortal. Bala Rama, strong Rama, also called Halayuda, armed with plows in battle, Krishna's brother and close friend, the 8th avatar of Vishnu. In Vishnu Sahasranama, Rama is another name for the 394th Vishnu. In the interpretation of Adi Sankara's comments, translated by Swami Tapasyananda from the Ramakrishna Mission, Rama has 2 meanings. 1. Almighty Brahman who bestows yogis. 2. He, Vishnu, who left heaven to minister to Rama, the son of Dasaratha. Krishna Awatara. Krishna is one of the gods de puja by Hindus, in the form of a man with dark skin or dark blue, wearing a yellow dhoti and a crown decorated with peacock feathers. In painting and sculpture, he is generally depicted playing the flute while standing with his legs bent sideways. Hindu legends in the Puranas and Mahabharata state that he was the 8th son of Vasudeva and Devaki, a nobleman from the kingdom of Surasena. In general, he is worshipped as the 8th Avatara incarnation of Lord Vishnu among the 10 Avatara of Vishnu. In some Hindu school traditions, for example Gaudiya Vaishnava, he is considered a manifestation of absolute truth, or a manifestation of God himself, and in the interpretation of books on behalf of Vishnu or Krishna, for example Bhagavatava, he is glorified as the supreme personality of Godhead. In Bhagavata Purana, he is depicted as a young shepherd who is adept at playing the flute, while in the Mahabharata he is recognized as a wise, powerful, and authoritative leader. In addition, he is well known as a figure who gives philosophical teachings, and Hindus believe in Bhagavad-gītā as a book containing Krishna's sermons to Arjuna on spiritual knowledge. Stories about Krishna appear widely in various spheres of Hinduism, both in the philosophical and theological traditions. Various traditions describe him from different perspectives, as a child god, prankster, supernatural hero, and the Almighty. The Ramayana book is an earlier Indonesian. Part 2 to Part 3. The works of Santosaba. Created as a discourse to scientists based on academic studies, in an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. INDONÄSIARYÄ. By Santosaba. Exploration and research. Complete info. WhatsApp to +62 813 2132 9787.